you ever noticed that life often becomes silent at the very moment you most desperately need an answer? You pray, you wait, you reflect, and you search for some unmistakable sign that you have not been forgotten, yet the relationship remains uncertain. The door you hoped would open stays closed. The healing you long for seems painfully slow. The future refuses to explain itself, and the silence begins to feel heavier than the problem itself. At first, there is only the absence of an answer. Then the mind begins to fill that absence with fear. It tells you that nothing is happening. It tells you that you have fallen behind, that you made the wrong decision, or that everyone else has received guidance except you. It convinces you that silence is evidence of abandonment. But the silence is not God's absence. It is an invitation to remember the presence of God within you. There are seasons when life speaks loudly through opportunities, changes, conversations, and unexpected openings. There are also seasons when life grows quiet because the next lesson cannot be heard through noise. In those seasons, you are being invited to listen in a different way, not with the anxious mind that demands immediate explanations, but with the deeper awareness that does not need to understand everything before it can trust. Think of a seed beneath the soil. From the surface, nothing appears to be happening. There is no green leaf, no flower, and no visible evidence of progress. If you judge the seed only by what could be seen, you might conclude that it had been forgotten in the darkness. But beneath the surface, the seed is opening, roots are forming, the old shell is breaking apart so that life can emerge from within it. Your silent season may be doing the same thing. You may believe that you are waiting for your life to change while life is quietly changing you. You may be releasing an identity built around approval. You may be growing tired of abandoning yourself to keep other people comfortable. You may be recognizing how exhausting it has been to control every outcome, predict every possibility, and carry responsibilities that were never yours. These inner changes rarely arrive with applause. They happen when you pause before reacting in the old way. They happen when you resist the urge to chase someone who has withdrawn. They happen when you stop measuring your journey against the visible life of another person. They happen when you sit alone and begin to realize that loneliness can become an invitation to return home to yourself. The ego calls this silence a delay. Your deeper self recognizes it as preparation. The ego wants certainty because it believes certainty will keep you safe. It wants to know when the answer will come, how the problem will be solved, and what the future will look like. It wants a complete map before it is willing to take the next step. But life does not unfold according to the schedule of the fearful mind. A river does not demand to see the ocean before it continues flowing. It does not argue with every bend in its path. It moves around rocks, through valleys, and across unfamiliar ground because movement is part of its nature. Even when the river becomes quiet, it has not stopped belonging to the greater journey. Your peace begins the moment you stop demanding that life reveal the entire map. This does not mean ignoring pain or pretending uncertainty is easy. It does not mean covering grief with spiritual language or acting as though you never feel afraid. It means allowing your emotions to be present without turning them into permanent conclusions. You can feel confused and still be guided. You can feel tired and still be held by love. You can have no visible answer and still be moving toward a deeper truth. There is a place within you that has never been abandoned. Beneath the fear, beneath the questions, and beneath every story of being unworthy, there is a quiet awareness that remains connected to the source of life. You do not have to manufacture this connection. You do not have to deserve it, prove it, or earn it through suffering. The connection already exists because it is part of what you are. Your task is not to create divine presence, but to become still enough to remember it. The silence is not God's absence. It is an invitation to remember the presence of God within you. The difficulty is that the ego does not know how to rest in mystery. When it receives no explanation, it creates one. When it cannot find certainty, it imagines danger. You may see this happen in an ordinary moment. You send a message to someone you care about and receive no reply. For a few minutes, there is only silence. Then the mind begins to speak. Maybe they are disappointed in me. Maybe I said too much. Maybe they no longer care. Maybe I am about to lose something important. Within moments, an empty space has become filled with suffering. The silence itself did not create the suffering. The meaning placed upon it did. This is one of the most freeing truths awareness can reveal. You cannot always control what happens, but you can become conscious of the story your mind attaches to what happens. The moment you notice the story, space appears between your awareness and the fear. You can say, fear is moving through me right now. That is very different from saying, because I am afraid, something terrible must be true. The first statement makes room for awareness. The second allows fear to define reality. The ego speaks in absolutes. It says nothing will change, no one understands, and you will always feel this way. Awareness speaks more gently. It says, this is what I am experiencing in this moment. A moment is not a lifetime. A feeling is not your identity. A thought is not automatically the truth. Imagine the sky during a storm. Clouds may cover everything, and for a time it may appear that the light has disappeared, yet the sky has not been damaged by the storm. The sun has not been destroyed. The clouds are simply moving through something much larger than themselves. Your thoughts and emotions are like those clouds. Anxiety may pass through you. Sadness may cover your inner sky. Uncertainty may make life feel smaller and darker. But beneath those changing conditions, your spiritual nature remains whole. The source within you has not been damaged by the temporary weather of the mind. The ego forgets this because it identifies with every cloud. It says, if I feel lost, I must be lost. If I feel unloved, I must be unlovable. If I do not know what comes next, there must be no path. Your true self does not turn every passing feeling into a permanent identity. It can allow the storm to exist without becoming the storm. This awareness does not remove every difficult emotion. It gives you a different relationship with emotion. Instead of being carried away by fear, you become the presence that can hold fear with compassion. And that presence is closer to your true nature than the fear itself. Control is one of the ego's favorite ways of escaping uncertainty. You may try to control how others respond, how quickly healing occurs, or when life finally gives you what you believe you need. You replay conversations, imagine every possible outcome, and hold tightly to situations that have already begun to change. Beneath control is often a frightened desire to feel safe. There is nothing shameful about that desire. But when you make control the condition of your peace, every unexpected change becomes a threat. Think of holding water in your hands. When your palms are open, the water can rest there. When you squeeze tightly, it escapes between your fingers. Life often responds in the same way. Love, connection, and peace cannot always be preserved through force. Sometimes they remain only when there is enough freedom for truth to breathe. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean becoming passive, indifferent, or unwilling to act. It means releasing the belief that peace depends on making everything happen according to your plan. You can still speak honestly. You can still make decisions. You can still leave what is harmful and protect what is sacred. But your actions no longer need to come from panic. They can arise from clarity. This is the difference between force and alignment. Force says, I must make this happen or I will not be okay. Alignment says, I will act from love, integrity, and awareness, and I will allow life to respond in its own way. There may be places in your life where silence is revealing how much energy you have spent managing the opinions of others. You may have learned to sense everyone's mood, soften every truth, and hide your own needs so that conflict could be avoided. You may have believed that being endlessly helpful, agreeable, and available would protect you from rejection. Over time, you became visible to everyone except yourself. People-pleasing can resemble kindness, but when it is driven by fear, it becomes another attempt to control. It says, if I can make everyone comfortable, then no one will leave. If I am useful enough, no one will reject me. If I never disappoint anyone, I will be safe. But love does not require you to disappear. The quiet season may be showing you where you have confused self-abandonment with compassion. It may be revealing the hidden resentment beneath your constant agreement. It may be helping you hear the truth you could not hear while you were busy becoming what everyone else needed. You can be loving without betraying yourself. You can be compassionate without carrying every burden. You can allow another person to feel disappointed and still remain faithful to your own integrity. A boundary created from anger may become a wall. A boundary created from awareness becomes an expression of truth. Love can say no. Love can step away. Love can stop explaining itself to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. Love can release someone without turning that person into an enemy. The deepest form of love may be the refusal to become what wounded you. This is one of the ways God may be working in the silence, not by immediately changing everyone around you, but by restoring the relationship you have with your own soul. Comparison is another form of noise that becomes louder when life appears still. You look at someone your age and see the relationship, purpose, confidence, or peace you believe you should already possess. Their visible progress becomes evidence against your own life. But you are comparing your inner uncertainty with their outer appearance. You do not know the whole landscape of their journey, and their path was never meant to become the measure of yours. A tree does not feel ashamed because the tree beside it blossoms first. Each root grows through different soil. Each branch responds to its own season. Nature does not hurry itself through comparison, yet the human mind is constantly asking, why am I not there yet? You may not be late. You may be in a season that cannot be rushed. Life may be deepening your self-respect before bringing you into a relationship that requires it. It may be teaching you patience before placing something valuable in your hands. It may be dissolving an old identity because the next chapter cannot grow inside the person you once believed you had to be. This is not a promise that every desire will appear exactly as you imagine. Spiritual trust is not a bargain in which you surrender today so that life must reward you tomorrow. Trust is the willingness to remain connected to love even when the outcome is unknown. You do not trust because you are guaranteed a particular result. You trust because fear is no longer the authority that determines how you live. Loss can make this difficult. When someone leaves, a dream ends, or a familiar chapter closes, silence can feel unbearable. The routines that once gave shape to your life disappear, and you wake up remembering what is no longer there. Grief deserves tenderness. It should never be rushed into a lesson. You are allowed to miss what was. You are allowed to feel the emptiness left behind. You are allowed to admit that spiritual awareness has not made you immune to heartbreak. But even within grief, love has not necessarily vanished. The form may have changed. The relationship may have ended. The chapter may be over. Yet the love you experience can continue through the compassion you now offer, the wisdom you carry, and the way your heart has been expanded by having cared so deeply. Sometimes the silence after loss becomes the place where love is transformed rather than erased. Pain, when held gently, can soften judgment. It can show you that every person you meet is carrying something you cannot see. It can make you less interested in winning every argument and more interested in protecting your own capacity to remain kind. This does not mean accepting mistreatment. Awareness does not erase discernment. It strengthens discernment by removing hatred from it. You can acknowledge that someone hurt you without making the wound the center of your identity. You can protect your peace without spending your life wishing for punishment. You can step away while refusing to allow another person's actions to determine the energy you bring into the rest of your life. This is where forgiveness enters. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as excusing what happened, removing consequences, or welcoming harmful behavior back into your life. But forgiveness is not a reward you give to the person who hurt you. It is the gradual decision to stop offering your present life to a past wound. Imagine resentment as a rope connecting you to the experience that caused you pain. Each time you replay the event, tighten the story, or imagine the apology that never came, the rope pulls against your heart. Forgiveness does not say the event was acceptable. It simply places the rope down. You may not be ready to forgive completely. Forgiveness cannot be forced without becoming another form of self-betrayal. But you can begin with willingness. You can say, I no longer want this wound to speak for me. That willingness is already a movement toward freedom. Forgiveness may also need to include the person you used to be. You may still judge yourself for staying too long, trusting too quickly, or ignoring what you now clearly understand. You may look backward with today's awareness and condemn the version of you who did not yet possess it. But the person you were then was walking with the light available at the time. They were trying to find love. They were trying to feel safe. They were trying to survive experiences they did not yet know how to heal. Self-forgiveness means reaching back with compassion and saying, I will not hate you for what you did not yet understand. When you stop fighting your past, you recover the energy needed to live in the present. The past becomes a teacher rather than a prison. You can carry its wisdom without continuing to carry its shame. This is how intention begins to change. The ego uses intention as a demand. It says, I need this person, this answer, or this outcome so I can finally be at peace. Spiritual intention begins with a different question. Instead of asking only what you want life to give you, you ask what quality of being you are willing to bring into life. Instead of asking, how do I force this relationship to work, you ask, how can I bring honesty and love into this relationship? Instead of asking, when will my purpose finally appear, you ask, how can I live with meaning today? Instead of asking, how do I remove all uncertainty, you ask, who do I choose to be while uncertainty is here? These questions return your power to the present moment. You cannot always decide what arrives, who stays, or how quickly the next chapter unfolds, but you can become conscious of the energy you bring into what is already here. You can meet fear with gentleness. You can meet conflict with awareness. You can meet silence without immediately turning it into abandonment. This is what alignment with the source looks like. It is not a life without difficulty. It is a life in which your spiritual identity is no longer controlled by every difficulty. Your true self is not the anxious voice counting every delay. It is not the wounded identity repeating old disappointments. It is not the image you created to earn approval, avoid rejection, or appear strong when you felt uncertain inside. Beneath all of those identities is a quieter presence. It does not compete. It does not need to prove its worth. It does not beg the world for permission to exist. It knows that its value comes from the same source that gives life to rivers, trees, stars, and every living thing. You may recognize this presence in simple moments. You are sitting near a window before the day begins. Nothing has been solved, but for a few seconds you feel no need to solve anything. Morning light enters the room. Your breathing slows. The mind becomes quiet enough for you to notice that you are here, alive, and held within something larger than your worries. That moment may not last long, but it reveals something essential. Peace is not always created by changing your circumstances. Sometimes peace appears when you stop fighting the moment you are in. This is the beginning of surrender. Surrender is not weakness, resignation, or giving up on your life. Spiritual surrender is the release of your war with life. It is the willingness to say, I do not understand this season, but I will no longer allow fear to decide what it means. You may still take action. You may still have difficult conversations, make courageous choices, and move away from what is unhealthy. But your actions begin to come from clarity instead of panic. You stop pushing every door because you are afraid no other door will open. You stop chasing people who repeatedly show you that they cannot meet you with honesty. You stop remaining in places where your spirit has grown quiet from exhaustion. Letting go becomes less about losing and more about making room. A gardener does not keep every branch simply because it once produced flowers. Some branches must be pruned so that new growth can receive light. In the same way, beliefs, relationships, and identities that once protected you may now prevent you from living honestly. You may have learned to remain silent because speaking your truth once created conflict. You may have learned to overgive because love once felt conditional. You may have become fiercely independent because trusting others felt dangerous. These patterns were not proof that something was wrong with you. They were ways you attempted to protect yourself before you knew another way. Awareness allows you to look at them without judgment. Instead of asking, why am I like this? You begin asking, what was this part of me trying to protect? That question changes the inner conversation. It replaces condemnation with understanding, and understanding creates the conditions in which real change becomes possible. The frightened part of you does not need punishment. It needs reassurance. It needs to know that you will no longer abandon yourself. It needs to hear that you can make a mistake without becoming unworthy, that someone can leave without taking your identity with them, and that uncertainty does not mean you are alone. Healing often begins in this quiet way, not through force, but through a new relationship with yourself. The silence is not God's absence. It is an invitation to remember the presence of God within you. You may have spent this season asking God for a sign that your life is changing, yet the growing peace within you may already be that sign. The moment you stop reacting as you once did is a sign. The moment you choose honesty over performance is a sign. The moment you release the need to control someone else's response is a sign. The moment you notice fear without allowing it to become your identity is a sign. The moment you forgive yourself for being human is a sign. You were waiting for the outer world to announce that transformation had begun, while transformation was quietly happening in the way you met the outer world. This is often how divine work unfolds. It does not always remove the storm immediately. Sometimes it teaches you that the sky within you is larger than the storm. It does not always give you the answer. Sometimes it frees you from the belief that you cannot be at peace without one. It does not always return what was lost. Sometimes it reveals the love, strength, and awareness that the loss could never take away. There may still be unanswered questions in your life. The relationship may remain uncertain. The future may still be hidden. But you can now listen to the silence differently. It is no longer only something to endure. It becomes a space in which you meet yourself more honestly. It shows you where fear has been speaking too loudly, where control has replaced trust, and where your need for approval has carried you away from your own truth. You do not need to judge what you discover. Awareness itself is already a return. Each day, give yourself a few quiet moments before entering the noise of the world. You do not need to search for a dramatic spiritual experience. Become aware of your breathing. Notice the thoughts that appear without following every one of them. Allow yourself to sit in the presence of life without asking the moment to become different. Ask gently, what am I carrying that I am ready to release? It may be the need to know exactly when everything will change. It may be resentment towards someone who never gave you the understanding you deserved. It may be an old belief that says you must prove your worth through sacrifice, perfection, or constant strength. Do not force the answer. Let it rise in its own time. Gratitude can also return you to the present, not gratitude used to deny pain, but gratitude that reminds you pain is not the whole of your life. Give thanks for one peaceful breath, one person who sees you clearly, one lesson you are beginning to understand, one quiet morning that asks nothing from you. These small moments bring the mind back from the imagined future into the life that is here. When fear returns, notice it and say, fear is here, but fear is not all that I am. The part of you that can observe fear is already larger than the fear itself. When resentment returns, remember that forgiveness can happen one breath at a time. You do not need to erase the memory. You only need to stop renewing the wound each day. When the urge to control returns, imagine placing the situation into the hands of an intelligence wiser than the anxious mind. Say, I will do what love asks of me today, and I will allow tomorrow to arrive in its own time. This is trust in its simplest form. You are not becoming a completely different person through these practices. You are remembering the self beneath the fear, the self that already knows how to be still, how to love, and how to live in harmony with the source. One day, you may look back and realize that the season you thought was empty was filled with unseen beginnings. While you were asking when life would move again, roots were growing, your heart was softening, your awareness was deepening. You were learning to trust without proof and rest without having every answer. So breathe now. You have not been forgotten. You have not fallen outside the flow of life. You remain connected to the same divine presence that moves through rivers, opens flowers, carries the seasons, and brings light after every night. The silence is not the end of your story. It may be the sacred place where you remember that God was never far away, that love never stopped working, and that the peace you were seeking was not waiting somewhere in the future. It was waiting quietly within you. Share in the comments what this silent season may be revealing in your life. And subscribe if you would like to continue these journeys into peace, awareness, and spiritual truth. Until we meet again, release what you cannot carry, trust what you cannot yet see, and remember that even in the deepest silence, love is still at work.